And gents, it's lovely to be here. My name's Heather Massey and we have Hannah Denton here as well, and we're presenting our study outside. It's a clinical trial looking at a randomised control trial as a feasibility for individuals experiencing mild to moderate depression. So I'm a lifelong, sorry, I won't use my hands. I'm a lifelong outdoor swimmer, pictured here in my favourite space. And my first real involvement with, I'm a water safety researcher by trade, working in Portsmouth. And my first really experience of working with people with depression was when we were actually contacted to say, well, you talk a lot about the problems associated with cold water, but none of the positives that come out of it. And that would have been in the early 2010s, something like that. I then got involved with a media production because that's what scientists do. They go and report stuff before they've actually got any data. Totally the wrong way, but we were there from a safety point of view for the film with the BBC, the doctor that gave up drugs, where an individual came to us wanting to find relief from her symptoms of depression. And we said, do you really want to do this? And she said, yes, she did. So we worked with her over a period of 18 months where her symptoms were reduced as a consequence of her swimming with a swim coach for that period, and remained drug-free for the 18 months that we were following her up. I'll hand you over to Hannah to introduce herself.
Hello, am I in the right place? Is that right? Okay, so yeah, like Heather, also a lifelong swimmer. That's how I got into the research. I had got a bit bored doing my clinical job. I'm a psychologist in adult mental health, and I thought I'd explore doing some research, and I got to do an NRES, and I wanted to research outdoor swimming. There was very little research at the time, so I wanted to get as close to the experience as possible, which was why I tried doing the swim-along interviews, which resulted in these studies and meeting Heather, and then we've reached where we are now.
So we'll go ahead and really introduce our study that we'll be talking to you about, but prior to doing this study, we collaborated on quite a lot of research. And really the quote that you see here on the left-hand side was something that has been an ever-present for us through the research that we have undertaken. And as a consequence of the body of work that we've done separately, but also together, we were lucky, I think is probably the best way of phrasing it, to be funded by the National Institute for Health and Care Research to undertake a feasibility randomised control trial comparing outdoor swimming courses with usual care compared to a control group of usual care only for people with mild to moderate symptoms of depression. Now, a randomised control trial is a particular type of research. I won't say it's my favourite, and it is particularly brutal, particularly for the participants taking part. So we were asked to recruit 88 participants for what we call a feasibility trial. So this study won't give us definitive answers, but it gives us lots of learnings and information to be able to run a definitive trial to say if there's clinical and cost effectiveness, so we can change policy. So we were asked to recruit 88 participants from 3 different locations: London, North Devon and Worcester, so different types of water. We asked them all to complete some online surveys looking at their symptoms of depression and anxiety, and also use of health services. They were then randomised, this is the brutal bit, to either the swim course, unusual care, or usual care only. They then completed that 8-week course, and then we then undertook the same surveys again and followed them up a further 2 months later and repeated that process. Now, it was really important to us that we learnt from this research. So we conducted some focus groups, and also we made sure that those in the control group got a swim course. Because if you're wanting to go on a trial like this, you really want to swim. That's the whole point. And it's really important that we retain the control group. Otherwise, there's no point in doing this research. So these were the reasons we went for this study design. Not necessarily our favourite, but we had to do it that way. So we had a huge amount of interest for something that was quite local. Recruited 87 of the 88 people we were asked to recruit, mainly female. Something we want to change for our next study that we'll tell you a little bit about. And again, mainly white British individuals. Again, something we need to try to improve is the diversity and the ability to access these types of courses. So something we're really keen to work on. In terms of course attendance, so the number of people that attended the course, we had attendance of about 61%. So that's fairly in line with people's level of attendance for other mental health therapies. So it might seem quite low, but actually it's on a par with other therapeutic interventions. But what we found is those that attended regularly. So if you got them there for a few sessions, they would come back. So it's really inspiring them at the start to be able to maintain that. Now, I've thrown a few numbers at you, and I quite like the narrative that goes alongside this. And this is something that we heard a number of times from, again, our cohort as well. I've felt less anxiety since doing the course and much more connected with myself and with nature. And this was something that we wanted to do, was make sure that we not only had the dry numbers, but also had that qualitative component, which very few randomised controlled trials have. They can be a bit staid and a bit quantitative, a bit numbers orientated. So I will have to go back to a few numbers, unfortunately. And these are some of the initial findings from the research. My apologies, it's a bit dense and heavy. But on the top left there, you'll see a graph looking at symptoms of depression. We see from that graph that at the start, people had mild to moderate symptoms of depression, and those in the control group, so the white dots, their levels of depression were similar throughout the study, yet those on the swim intervention group had reductions in those symptoms as well. And that was maintained in follow-up as well. We also see that if you look at the table on the far side, that there were more people had reductions in their symptoms of depression, but there were still those that had an increase. And that was also mirrored with symptoms of anxiety as well, that you can see on the bottom of that slide. We see that anxiety levels initially were very similar in both the swim and control groups, but then the swim group, their levels of anxiety were nearly subclinical by the end of the swim course and then follow-up. Well, as well as looking at clinical effectiveness, we need to look at cost effectiveness. And we do see some reductions in the numbers of days absence from work, whether that's paid or unpaid, and also the number of interrupted days as well. Again, within the 8-week period after the swim group had completed the swim, on average, each person had one less therapy session in that 8-week period. So there's some interesting and promising findings. They're by no means conclusive, and that's why we need to move to a bigger trial in order to find that definitive evidence. But the important thing from this point of view was the learnings we took from conducting this type of research. And I'm going to hand to Hannah, who'll go through the qualitative and interesting stuff in this talk.
No pressure. So, as Heather said, an RCT can feel a bit of a dehumanising approach. It's all about being objective, so you're trying to get as far away from the person as you can, in a way. Our motivation for doing this kind of research, I suppose, just to clarify, is that if you get this kind of evidence, then you can get it into nice guidelines, and then hopefully that means that there's more funding and then more people can get the opportunity to swim. So that's the kind of passionate side. And as part of that, we wanted to try and make the experience of being a participant as positive as we could. And that's why the qualitative for the feasibility was a really important component. So it wasn't really about understanding the experience of being on the course in a very deep way for the feasibility. It was really a very practical look at what can we do when we do the main study to make it as positive experience for people as we can. So we did involve a lot of people. We have a LEAP group, so that's a lived experience advisory panel that we were referring to, and Heather's done a lot of work, a lot of PPI work prior to the study, thinking about how we could make the study as accessible as possible. So that's part of the reason why we have Lidos as well as C locations and late locations, because Lidos allow people who aren't necessarily such confident swimmers to be able to swim. So, so we asked as many people as we could, or I asked as many people as I could, who were part of the study, to tell us about the experience. So that was the swim coaches, the people who referred people, the participants themselves, both the ones that swam and control groups, people doing the recruitment, everybody, to tell me how they found being part of the study. And just did a kind of basic thematic analysis and came up with 5 themes that I felt we needed to consider when we were designing the main study, and that we needed to think about them at all stages of the study. So during recruitment, while we're actually offering the swim courses, and then during the follow-up period. We've got quite a long follow-up period. So we're trying to keep people engaged for like nearly 6 months after they've done the swim course to see whether it has an ongoing impact. So just going through these very briefly. So accessibility, you need to be able to get to the water. You need to know when it is, actually, for starters. So I've just put a couple of example quotes for each of these themes. So you need to know when the course was. Doing research as part of the NHS is a bureaucratic nightmare. And it turns out that other funders and bodies don't understand that seasonal component is really important, and so they're just letting things drift, and the months are going by, and we're getting incredibly anxious. So in the end, everything's always done as a bit of a rush, and a lot of the swimmers didn't get that much notice, which made it difficult to know when the course was going to be. And then we for the next study, we wanted to make sure as far as possible, people could get there by public transport. They could get in. There would be a range of places for people with disabilities. So that's accessibility. Sorry, the pressure of the 15 minutes is intense, isn't it? So belonging. Oh, God. Okay. Real pressure. Yeah, belonging. So people need to feel that they're going to be part of it. And that's before even signing up to the courses. Is outdoor swimming for me? Do people like me outdoor swim? Facing challenges with support, so this includes being a participant on the research. As Heather mentioned, there's lots of challenges just of being a participant, the paperwork, and being in the control group, and as well as being on the course. And like many people have found, I think that bit of challenge is really key, but that's difficult if you're the swim coach, because you're taking people to their edge. People need to believe they're going to enjoy it, and then a lot of the people did report having an amazing time on the courses, which was great. And then information, if you haven't come from a swimming background, if you don't know people who swim, there's so many questions and you don't know who to ask, and that's a real barrier. So that was something that we wanted to try and address. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but these were examples of all of the changes that we wanted to make following the qualitative component to try and make the full study as good as we could. If you're interested, then I have just had a paper, or we have just had a paper published. Thank you, everyone. So you can read more about it there. And then on to the next phase. So this is the main study. Yeah, and we're about halfway through. It's been challenging but surprisingly successful. So we recruited 245 people this year we need 480 participants in total. This is as a qualitative researcher, this is a big challenge. How do you do meaningful qualitative research when you've got 480 people? But anyway, in terms of the RCT, we've had 15 courses.
15.
Heather
Yeah.
does the practical bit.
Sorry, we've had 15 courses run so far, and some have just started. 1 minute, yeah. They're dotted all over the country, from Sunderland right through to Penzance, and one based here at Rayrig Meadow, which is great. Yay! Thanks, Jonathan, Gilly and Vicky. And yeah, we just want to say a big thank you for your patience listening to us. To the volunteers in particular, their perseverance with the swimming when it was quite cold, and all the people that have helped us on our journey to being here, and also to the people that took all the photos that we've presented. Thank you very much.
I was working, and I yeah.
Joyce.
Hi, well done, fantastic. Really hard to do. A couple of just things. I assume from the quotes that they hadn't swum before. Is that right?
They're mostly they're introductory outdoor swimming sessions, so mostly they would. Some people have never swum before, so they don't have any experience of swimming. Or those that were taking part in the lake or Lido had to have some experience and level of swimming ability.
Yeah. So, do you feel that 8 sessions was enough to see a real benefit? Because and how did you control for the? Obviously, the water temperature is going to really vary, as you said.
There was no. This is a very pragmatic trial. 8 sessions. We'd love to be able to fund more, but it's an introductory outdoor swimming course. The swim coaches then supported people to find local groups that they could swim with, so that they could carry on their swimming journey if they chose to.
There was quite a lot of feedback that it wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
But it's great. Well done. It's really hard to do, but we need to do these things.
Amen. Was it more community aspect or the actual swimming that it was about? Still us.
We don't know.
Good question.
I think you can spend a lot of time trying to tease it out, and I guess we probably will. So the qualitative analysis for the next bit will be looking much more at the experience of swimming. I mean, you can tease it out, but equally maybe you don't have to. Maybe it is about the whole, and yeah.
I think the 2 more questions. Mine might be the same question. The advantage of RCT is that you can calibrate out all of the background noise and study the value of that intervention. Is anyone looking at the relative merits of different interventions? And so swimming as opposed to walking or playing chess?
That's next.
Yeah. This is our lifelong dream, to be able to research this area until we retire, basically, and beyond, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, it would be. I mean, I think it would be really interesting to compare different. So the control group is treatment as usual. Partly that makes it much easier, but also it's more likely to show an impact. So.
What change are you trying to drive in the health system? Are you trying to
Money.
yeah.
Well, we'd like to change NICE policy, and that changing NICE policy brings funding to the area, and that means we've got coaches that can be funded to do these courses, fully funded, and not have to do things on a very piecemeal level, where they have funding for 1 year. This would mean consistent funding, consistent employment, and consistent education and qualification for those supporting the sessions.
I think if you're completely naive to swimming, you need support, don't you? And people need to be paid to provide that.
I was just wondering if you realised of any long-term legacies, because you mentioned it kind of briefly at the start. Did any kind of long-term groups formed after the course ended? In the 8 weeks, did people carry on rally together?
Yeah, from both the first study and already from the second study, we've got a group in Lymington Sea Bears, that have already formed, and they started their journey with us less than 6 months ago. We still have a group in North Devon that are still swimming together, and they have a WhatsApp group. A lot of the groups do naturally come together and form their own a community.
There's
So
the
yes,
one in Portsmouth as well.
there. Oh yes. I've not got time to tell everyone this, but when I see you maybe in the pub later on, I've got a really cool story about someone I met at the gym 5 years ago who has changed the face of Portsmouth Stop Sewage, and she's amazing.
Yeah, not.
Yeah,